Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Isherwood. I'm a member of Humphrey Chapter and the San Francisco Alumni Chapter of Phi Alpha Delta. I'd like to welcome you all to the Phi Alpha Delta Speaker Series. Tonight's webinar is focusing on trends in family law, and we have some great speakers tonight. We have Robert Lara, Krista Garcia, and Savannah Kuntz for all of us. And so we're going to start out, and we have some prepared questions. And then we will open it up to questions from the attendees. There's a chat box and a Q&A box. If you want to put your questions in that, we'll go ahead and get to those as soon as the prepared questions are completed. But again, thank you. And I want to give each of the panelists a chance to tell you a little bit about themselves and what their practice is and where they practice. So Robert, do you want to start?
Sure. First, I want to thank Michelle and Phi Alpha Delta for putting on these topics. I think they're very helpful for all of us trying to navigate the wonderful world of lawyering, especially when it comes to family law. I have been a licensed attorney in New Mexico since 2009. My areas of specialty are administrative and election law. However, I am a child of divorce. And so one of the things that I ended up learning how to do and having to learn how to do well was family law. And so when I'm not dealing with election stuff, I'm a family law attorney. I've represented clients in, the garden variety of divorce, probate stuff. I do a lot of guardian ad litem work and child services cases. Right now, I have been the staff attorney for the 3rd Judicial District Court here in Southern New Mexico for about 3.5 years. So I am the attorney that evaluates all of your motions and petitions and all that stuff and tells the judges what we should or shouldn't do. And I also help run the Pro Se Center here. So I end up giving quite a bit of guidance to pro se petitioners in family law cases. I think family law is a super important part of what we do as attorneys. It's also one of the more taxing and emotional parts of it. And I look forward to your questions and also hearing from Savannah and Krista, because they are both awesome attorneys and they get to do the customer service side of it while I do the judges side of it.
Savannah, would you like to go next?
Sure. So my name is Savannah Kuntz, and I am formerly of the E.D. White chapter and now the Atlanta Alumni chapter. So I practice exclusively in the area of family law in Georgia, and I've been in Georgia since 2014. Prior to that, I went to law school at LSU, so I got some civil law training, although nothing that I learned in the civil law is in any way comparative to what I do now. And so I really appreciate Phi Alpha Delta for putting these webinars on and having this opportunity to talk about it. I mean, when I was in law school, I didn't really know family law was that much of an option until I took the class. I never really thought about it all that much. And then really found my homes when I started practicing. So I'm really appreciative to get to be a part of this and look forward to discussing more about the exciting field of practice.
Great. And now, Krista, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice?
Hi, everyone. I am a former member of the Magnus chapter and now a New Mexico alumni member. So Phi Alpha Delta was a lot of fun for me in law school. So live it up, guys. I started as a prosecutor. Criminal law was kind of my passion. And I kind of explored that all over the world. I spent some time overseas doing that. And I got to be a part of the Gitmo program here at my school. And I came out as a prosecutor doing sex crime prosecution here in the state. And I just got a little burnt out, got a little tired of the politics and decided to open up my own firm. I started in criminal defense and found the niche intersection of domestic violence and the criminal, civil, and family law issues that it creates. And that when you are really helping someone through one legal situation, they kind of meander into other places. So with that natural progression, my practice expanded, and now it's the majority of what I do. I knew nothing about it before I started practicing. That's the worst way to get into it. You learn all the important lessons, definitely the hard way. But I think it's the one unique area of law that every person during their lifetime will touch in some way or another. Whether you're getting married, that's a legal document. getting divorced. It's something that's going to affect everyone you know. And I bet all your friends ask you those questions. So I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of this and to give back to P.A.D because I know that I benefited from it a lot as a student. So, hi.
Great, thank you. So if you just joined us, we're going to start out with some prepared questions, and then we'll open the floor up to questions from attendees. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat box or the Q&A, and we will get to those shortly. So I want to start out with asking all of you, how has COVID affected the practice of family law? And are there any unique issues that have come up during the pandemic, and do you think they will persist? Krista, do you want to start or?
Sure. COVID has really affected my family law practice more than anything else. I love that COVID made criminal law digital. I think a lot of that, it works. It's scheduling conferences, things that our clients don't need to be present for. So it's great. I hope it never goes back. But family law, it's been giving some unique challenges, especially when you're talking about fitness as a parent. Recently during COVID, I think we've all seen it kind of in our lives. Substance abuse has become a big issue. People are struggling with mental illness, substance abuse issues from being quarantined and being alone in the isolation and all the struggles of co-parenting with someone that you may have to be forced to live with now. And when we're having these hearings, I think there's a huge disadvantage into not being able to see someone's person. We're doing our family law hearings right now strictly through voice. And so it's hard to say how erratic a parent's behavior is or how their appearance has drastically changed due to a substance dependency when we can't see them. And I think there's a lot of nonverbal communication that's really important when you're trying to establish where a child is safe. So for COVID, I think it's really disadvantaged some of my clients who are dealing with a partner who are dealing with mental illness issues or substance abuse issues that are now being exacerbated just by the worldwide pandemic itself. That's the biggest changes I have seen. And then, of course, an increase in domestic violence, which I think is happening nationwide, and the other presenters can correct me if I'm wrong. We've seen a huge spike in domestic violence in New Mexico, and the courts are just backed up. They're limiting domestic violence hearings to 30 minutes, and that's a really short time to prove your burden to help get some of these domestic violence restraining orders to protect kiddos and parents from kind of the chaos that it's ensuing. I don't know if that was good. If you need any follow-up, please let me know.
Savannah, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo. There's definitely been a big impact on the way we try cases and the way we come to court, doing a lot of things digitally. So where I am in North Georgia, we have the major metro counties around Atlanta and some of our other bigger suburbs. And then we've got some really more rural or country areas. And so it's been a mixed bag trying to balance those issues and the issues that the families are facing. So in certain questions, you know, when we were ordered to shelter in place, things were really busy for us because we had to help families determine, is that really shuttling children between two homes, if they have two homes, and what impact did that have? And if one parent wanted to practice more, you know, protocols and the other parent didn't want to perhaps act as cautiously as others. And so we really had to jump in a lot. As Kristen said, family law really is where the rubber is going to meet the road for a lot of folks, where they don't otherwise interact with the law, knock on wood in those circumstances. And so in COVID, it really required a lot of co-parenting, a lot of communication between some folks who, even as good co-parents, maybe haven't seen or talked to each other in several years because they did their exchanges through school or some other event. And so it really caused our practice to go into complete overdrive. But I do think that there's a lot of things that went into place that we realized we need to plan for more in the future. So it's really helped us become more on our awareness as far as how issues get worked out and the different ways that we've got the ability to resolve issues.
Great. What about you, Robert? What are you seeing from your side?
I think the two things that COVID really touched on was, first of all, the economic disparities between litigants. We'll have one parent who's just not the breadwinner, and the other one, you know, is trying to bury them in COVID-related litigation, like Savannah and Krista were talking about, just motions about emergency this and temporary that, all because they can. And they knew that the other parent was going to be limited to what they could come to court, they could speak to an attorney, they could do, all the legwork that comes with the family law case. And so we'd see one side, especially some of the more aggressive counsel out there, filing things that just weren't really emergencies, but it was a tactic to get whatever that is that they thought was important. The other piece was just trying to understand, how do you tackle these novel arguments? Like, what is really a medical necessity? How do you deal with dad wants to get vaccinated, but mom is an anti-vax person? Like, the law doesn't discuss that. So how do you broker that compromise, with existing statute or case law? And then at the end of the day, the other piece that we see still a lot of is I call them the after effects or the aftershocks of the COVID isolation to the children. So we went to this lockdown mode, and now they're going to school, they're getting out, but they don't know how to interact with anybody. So we're seeing a lot of referrals to counselors, we're seeing a lot of acting out in school and stuff, and like those things get referred to us either in the juvenile court or in the family law court. And how do you help these children through trauma by using the tools in the toolkit as the court?
Great. So our next question, June is Pride Month, and one of the things we wanted to talk about was what types of family law issues and situations are you seeing that are unique to same-sex marriages and relationships, and what are some of the best ways to deal with them? I don't know. Robert, do you want to start with that one, or?
Sure. One of the more unique issues is New Mexico has always been a state that's been very inclusive to gay couples and couples adopting children or having children from previous marriages. And so in all theory, these people have been married for 30, 25, 40 years. But until we recognize their marriage legally, we didn't have any relief for when they got divorced. So we're having couples now coming and saying, well, I'm getting divorced. I've been with my partner for, a millennia, but I'm only entitled to the last 5 years of their retirement benefits because of when the Marriage Act, when it got legalized to be married. The other issues that we're seeing quite often is New Mexico is as a Western state, so our case law on what rights non-biological parents have over children is not as developed as some other parts of the country. So it's very novel and new arguments that get argued here as to, well, Robert's not the biological father, he is the adoptive father, kind of, because of the relationship between the two couples. But what rights does he have now that they're divorcing? And some attorneys are taking the stance that they're not married and they're not in a traditional marriage, so there's no rights. Other attorneys are trying to expand it. So those have been some difficult cases to deal with here.
What about you, Savannah? What have you seen in?
So we're a little slow to the party in the South. Georgia's not as blue as we come off as. We've made some advancements. So things like having a child support worksheet and the way that we do child support has very recently been updated from where the form indicated mother, father to now you actually get to type in the parties' names. And so working with a lot of those same issues with how do you define marital property in a circumstance where folks have been dating for over a decade, but have really only been married since the Oberfeld decision came out, or if they were married in a different state, and what about states that have common law marriage? And so there's a lot of areas there that there's not a lot of answers and not a ton of motivation from the judicial staff or other folks to be the groundbreaking decision or really shake things up. So you get really stuck with some case law that may have occurred before the Oberfeld decision came out, and no real way to sort of interpret or make that modern. So we've definitely got some challenges to overcome, both in the legislature and just generally within the practice. But we're trying to make strides. And so really it's a matter of thinking about the basic documents and making sure that they're inclusionary so that you're not automatically off-putting just by the document that's required to fill out. And you have to flip a coin and decide who's mother and who's father. So it's definitely an area that if someone is looking to get into appellate legislation that could eventually become law changing, this would be a great place to look into that type of work, because we're starting to make strides with equitable caregiver. But what does that mean? Is it only grandparents? Can other family members apply? And we're still pretty limited here as based on degrees of consanguinity and making sure that you're blood related. And so we definitely have some room to grow.
What have you seen, Krista, in your practice?
This was such a hard question to prepare for because I think in New Mexico, we're really spoiled in that our laws and our legislator and our judges are really progressive and we're very quick to change things. And it really helped during COVID too. The judges put out some emergency directives for family law in general, saying like, we're not going to authorize unnecessary travel for children. Don't ask for it. We're not doing this fight over holidays. Don't ask for it. If it's prescribed by a doctor, they're going to be taking it. Stop filing emergencies and kind of put out directives on what could be qualified as an emergency to stop the overrun that Mr. Lara was talking about. And in the same-sex marriage, we've never had forms that dictated mother and father. We can always put petitioner, respondent, and names. And so it really made me grateful when we had our planning session about what to talk about that I couldn't find something. And it made me kind of proud of my little legal community because so many times we're like behind the curve or too small to afford something. And so to know that we had that in our state made me feel really good. Personally, I haven't had too many same-sex couples coming to me for divorce. I think that's great. I wish more couples didn't need to get divorced. So it's not something I'm wishing on anyone. I did come across it with a little bit more adoption. We see that I do some step parent adoption and then same-sex couples doing the formal adoption of the children. But usually that goes hand in hand with the legal person that's helping them with their fertility plans and what their families are going to look like. But I think same-sex couples that I know and talk to, and when I talk to other people in the practice here in Albuquerque, a blended family is just hard, whether you're a same-sex couple or not. And navigating those with the pandemic was really rough. But I'm really excited that at least here in Albuquerque, our biggest city, it was hard to find a challenge. So come to Albuquerque if you would like to be in an inclusive environment where we love everyone and we just let you put the name on the form and sue you regardless.
Okay. Thank you. Our third question is, how important is it to have a strong understanding of different cultures and backgrounds in the practice of family law? And what are some ways to gain that knowledge and cultural competencies? Do you want to start, Savannah?
Yeah, I can start with this one. So where I am in the Atlanta area is a huge melting pot of different ethnicities, of different religions, of sort of all the melting pot things that can happen. And so you really have to have a good grasp. We actually have a good advancement as far as our continuing education. So there's a lot of CLEs that folks will do on the particularities of a particular religion or a particular ethnicity. And we certainly make it a topic of discussion even at continuing education events that aren't necessarily geared for that. So for example, in training to be a guardian ad litem and learning to be an advocate for children as a part of your family law practice, you talk to different attorneys who are from different backgrounds. So for example, if you're doing a parenting plan for the Jewish faith, you really have to be careful with your holidays because they are all right in the middle of the school year. And so you really have to put a lot of thought and preparation into how that works. And if you don't have a good knowledge of things like holidays, you can really mess up a parenting plan. So if someone came to me with an example of a holiday and my client said, yeah, that's fine, she can have that one. And I said, well, wait a minute, that's a month-long holiday. We really have to decide, are you not going to see the kids for a full month? So it really comes from making sure that you have a good grasp. There's issues in not just division of parenting time, but also in assets and does one culture use different assets? Would you think to appraise jewelry because that's not necessarily an issue in every single divorce, but certainly in certain cultures, the gift of jewelry or owning jewelry is just as important to them as their retirement account. So you really have to pay attention to these continuing education events, and meet other attorneys or just other individuals who come from these different backgrounds, because they are very much a big part of your practice. And you definitely don't want to get intertwined with someone who, you've sort of mixed up their cultural backgrounds and thus mixed up the rest of their parenting experience.
What about you, Robert? What experience have you seen, or what experience have you had with that, and what are your suggestions for people to gain that competency?
I think the one of the big experiences I've had with it is trying to understand how marriage and divorce are viewed by different cultures. I'm from a predominantly Catholic area of the country, so we have our own rules. But like other cultures are either much more liberal about it or they're much more conservative about it. And that was a surprise to me. The emotional aspect of this person is filing for divorce and how devastating that is in general is hard, but some people take it much deeper than I would have realized. And so I had to understand how to talk to people about, this is what it is for your religion or for your societal values, but this is what it is for the legal values. And this is what the law in New Mexico allows you to do and what not to do. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person, or doesn't mean you're evil or any of that stuff. And, or that they're evil. It's just how you understand it. And to do that, I took cultural competency classes as part of the judiciary. We strive to make sure that we understand, this is what like Savannah was saying, what a Jewish divorce may look like, and what a Sikh divorce might look like. We have several people here in southern New Mexico who are here because they're assigned to the local military bases. So that brings a whole other level of depth to these types of discussions. So it's trying to be empathetic with somebody's questions, trying to understand that, okay, I may view it a certain way, but they're viewing it a totally different way, and being understanding of that. And then, getting to the meat of the issue, like, what are you concerned about? I mean, like this morning, I had a woman who was very upset. She was getting divorced, and she needed to get divorced. It was an abusive relationship, but she didn't understand that she doesn't have to ask for permission from her husband to get divorced. That was still her cultural mindset, that was still the thing to do. And so we had to explain to her that's not how it works here. And so just have to be patient with people, because not only are they dealing with a trauma in their emotional lives, but this is also can be meaningful to them in ways we can't even imagine. So just take the time to learn that. Oh, that was helpful.
No, it was great. What about you, Krista? Is that something, the cultural competency, have you had to deal with that in your practice as well?
I definitely have. And the biggest way it shows up in my practice is communication and language. New Mexico is a really special place. We're a minority majority state. We have a huge Native American population. Our cities are surrounded by 14 different pueblos just in the metro area. And we have a huge Spanish speaking population, and we have an international district in our city where they have like 184 different registered languages. So you can get a really wide spectrum of people. And I've noticed that the way that people talk about the law and communicate within their own communities can really create confusion. The example that comes right off to the top of my head is notarios. So in Mexico, notaries are like legal professionals that can help you with documents. And it comes up a lot, people who've dealt with immigration documents in Mexico or in another country, or their family or extended family has. Well, a notary here is not a legal professional. They can't help you with things. And so just being able to find the right language to use can take some time. And like Robert was saying, this is an emotional and traumatic experience for anyone going through divorce or a custody issue. It comes with a lot of baggage. I mean, people in healthy, loving relationships don't usually just tend to split up. Usually something's occurred, something has happened, it's unhealthy for some reason. And if you try to, like a lot of us get busy, we're trying to get through our day, check things off our to-do list. If you forget to take the time and really allow your client to understand what's going on, you're going to definitely create more problems. Your client should never get their final divorce decree and have questions about what to do next. You should have taken the time to walk them through that. And when you have such a multicultural area that you're pulling clients from, it's important to be aware of just what word did I use to describe that? Did she fully understand me? In the holidays, that was a really great one that Savannah talked about that comes up all the time. And for me, religious holidays aren't as important in my upbringing. And so like Easter could seem like an oversight. Oh, we'll fix it later. And that could be someone's most precious thing that was so important for them and their kids. And so just taking the time to listen, I think, is the most important.
Great. What suggestions do you have for people who want to start a family law practice, and how do you make money at it? Who wants to start with that one? Savannah, do you want to start with that one?
So I'm an associate at a firm, and so Krista is definitely going to have a lot more background on how you get through that. But did you ask how we get into family law, or just how do you make
I
money?
think how do you get into it, and then Krista can really talk to more how do you start one.
Yeah. So I got into it because I went to law school and said I'm going to be a criminal defense attorney and no one's going to tell me differently. And here I am. I sat through so many law school speakers where someone said that and went, yeah, okay, but it really happened to me. So I got into a practice that really did all forms of litigation. We did personal injury, we did criminal, we did family, we did, kind of everything across the board. And I just took to family law like a duck takes to water. I mean, it really fit my skill set in that. I've seen some of the questions in the chat, but to some degree, it was just the ability to kind of block out what my client's going through and what I'm going through and realize that I'm not being a good advocate if I'm emotionally invested in their position. And I have to help them see this like a business decision and help them realize that really, we're talking dollars and cents in some areas. And there's a lot of emotional issues that are surrounded. Who keeps this particular blanket? But you can also get a new blanket at Target for like a third of what I'm going to charge. I had a client one time who called and it was an emergency because her ex changed the Netflix password. And you have to have that conversation and say, I just charged you 3 months worth of Netflix for me to pick up the phone. So, there's things you have to work through. And so it just fit into my skill set of being a combination of being able to practice that empathy and really get into it, but still be able to kind of protect my own mental health and help them sort of work through that process. And so, I'll kind of pass it off to Krista to get more into the financial side as I'm just an associate.
Krista, do you want to touch on like how did you start your practice and how do you support yourself on it and that sort of thing? And I think Robert may have some insights on that as well.
So I'm really blessed to have some great clients. All of my clients are from referrals. So doing good work is my number one advice, is make sure you're doing good work for people. They might not always bring you new clients, but if you do bad work and you don't pick up your phone and you don't listen, they will definitely talk about you then. I had some great colleagues that helped me transition out into private practice. It was a very scary decision to make. And I think Michelle can put my email in the chat. If you guys have any questions, please feel free. Because I look back now and I'm like, I wasted so much time being afraid of it. And now I love it. Boundaries are so important in this business. Everyone has a friend that needs a lawyer to help with a custody issue. Everybody has that friend. And when you get into a friend group and you do good work, they'll give you more people. So it's just having a good product to really get out there and being easy to talk to. Like I said, communication is so important. I don't think because I have a law degree, I need to say all kinds of SAT words. Plus, I can't spell them. Don't tell anyone. But if you can't spell it, don't say it. And being able to really connect with people on a person-to-person. And sometimes family law, at the end of the day, it's like, that's not right or that's not fair. and this is why. Let me support that position. And being able to tell your clients, yeah, you're right. That doesn't sound fair, does it? And move from there. As far as making money, there's a lot of models. I think everyone has that firm that just papers their cases to death, writes a motion for everything. I don't do that. My firm is very conservatively priced. A lot of mentors and other firms in the area continuously tell us to raise our prices, but we don't, because I think it's a shame. As an attorney, I realized I couldn't afford to get an attorney. And I thought, what a shame that is. We make our pricing very accessible, which helps us be able to help more people. When you have a retainer that's not like 3 mortgage payments, they're more likely to come to you and make payments. But making money in family law can be really hard if you don't have good boundaries, because there are those cases where you're going to start and not be able to finish. And so your question is, do I keep working for free, or do I put my focus on someone else that I could help and give them the tools to finish what they need? It's really hard. I'm not sure that it's family law specific either. I think these are the types of decisions and problems you have making money in any profession. I can tell you it's hourly. In the state of New Mexico, most family law attorneys charge hourly, and that can be really tedious. However, for me, it's comforting that I know that there's going to be consistent money flow. So that's a positive of being in this practice of law, where criminal law is flat fees. So you only get paid when the case is done. There's argument that you can take chunks as you go, but they always get in trouble for doing that. So flat fees, you get paid when you're done. And so that can create like huge gaps in cash flow in a business. And when you're a small business owner, you're going to hear that word all the time. It's going to be in your anxiety dreams and your stress nightmares. It's going to be cash flow, cash flow. So it's nice that family law creates that, but it is not easy money to make. You're going to work hard for your money because it's an emotional area of the law. Clients want to be heard, and your job is to listen to them within reason and then find the legal significance of what they're saying. And it's very often that I'll listen to a 30-minute story, and one fact from that story is all I needed to hear. So really, it's hard work, but it's worth it. And you get to help little babies. Who doesn't love that?
Awesome. Robert, do you have anything to add, about starting a practice, or, how to make money at it?
Sure. So I worked for a firm. I had my own practice, and then my law partner / wife has her own family law practice in the next room. So I deal with it all the time. I think the way I got started in family law was I had a friend who had a state contract to represent low-income families in family law matters, DV matters, who needed an associate attorney. So I jumped in. I said, well, I'll help you out. I need some extra money. And so I got to learn from a experienced attorney the A to Z of a family law case, what you need to do, how to handle it. I also got to learn from that attorney, who was a sole practitioner as well, the A to Z of how to handle a family law client. I think the first one that Krista and Savannah both talked about is communication. You've got to be on top of it with these people, emails, phone calls, whatever. Billing for that or not, that's a personal preference. I hated billing for emails, but everybody has their own model. You got to be on top of it. And every step of the case, this is what we're going to do. This is what happens next. Do you understand this is where we're going? And then answering those questions and taking that step. So I had a good mentor. I had a reliable source of income, was that state contract. And then I started bringing in my own private clients. As I started into my own practice, I made sure that I made friends with the local bar, the family law section, and every single judge that was going to hear my cases. I had lunch with. I went to their speaks or their talks or whatever, because I needed to know how Judge Savannah is different from Judge Krista. I needed to know how Judge Michelle feels about this custody case versus Judge Robert. And, that may seem like an unfair advantage or not the right way to look at it, but at the end of the day, being a lawyer is being persuasive. So you have to know your audience. And so knowing the judges and their likes and dislikes were helpful. And so I had a mentor, I knew about the judges, and then I made sure I went to as many CLEs or these types of presentations as possible so I could keep current as what was going on. And then I had to sit down and figure out my deal breakers as an attorney. Deal breaker number one, and it's in my retainer agreements. If you want me to do something that I feel is not in the best interest of the child, I will step out. And if you don't like it, go find yourself another attorney. That was my number one deal breaker, and that was it. Number two, it's I billed by the hour, but I need a $2,500 retainer just to start working. You don't have it, go figure it out, go finance your car, do whatever, because that person doesn't care about me. They care about their stuff, but they need to take care of me. I think for those of you who are considering family law practices, I want to put this in your head right now, because we've gotten burned several times, is if they're not paying their child support, they're not going to pay you. So get your retainer up front before you do anything. But they need to care about you because you're using this money to pay for your family. So get it in there, follow your trust requirements, follow your accounting requirements, bill hourly, quarterly, whatever, to get your billing done. The other deal breaker, the other issue for me was, what's in the child's best interest is not necessarily what is convenient for you. And I was very blunt with all my clients to remind them that and say, I don't care about you, I care about your kids. And this is about giving your kids the stability they need to see mommy and daddy, to have a life, and for you two to figure out how to handle your business. Because if you were adults and could co-parent without a court order, you wouldn't be here, but you're not. So I need you to understand that I'm doing this for your kids and not necessarily for you. The last piece of advice, and I saw that somebody put in there, how do you separate, is you have to understand that you can't fix crazy, and it's not your fault that this person married this other person. There are so many issues all the time, and everyone's laughing, and that's fine, but it's 100% true. Like, Savannah's 100% right. Like, I can't tell you how many cases I've dealt with where it's like, but it's the blanket, and I want the blanket. It's the principle of the blanket, and you're like, okay, well, this blanket costing you $100 and whatever an hour. So, let's go to Target and go buy you another one. But it's I can't fix that crazy. That's not my problem, and it's not my fault that you married this person. Being married myself recently, I still don't get it. Like, you loved each other enough, or you liked each other enough to have kids, or at least to get married, and now you want to stab each other. I don't get that. But it is what it is, and my job is to help them fix their issue. From a business perspective, that means I need to get you out of my office as fast as I can. So file things quickly, be on time with turnaround, do the legwork, read the reports, interview your witnesses, whatever, blah, blah, and get that file out, because you can't make money off of a case that continues to linger in your firm. You make money by getting new cases in and banging them out and getting them out the door. That's difficult for a lot of people, because then you have a mountain of work that you've created. Some people do it, one case at a time. However your money management style is, make it work for you. But at the end of the day, for me, we carried 40 cases in a month and got them out as quickly as we could. And we viewed each case like we were going to trial. So we filed the petition along with the interrogatories. We, requested depositions within the first month. We had, all of our, financial documents ready to go. We had it all ready to go because we did a lot of civil litigation too. And that's where I got my training as a civil litigator, was to walk in there like you're going to trial tomorrow. So everything was ready to go. Now that costs money. And so my clients had to be told, this is what's getting paid for. This is why I'm doing it. But at the end of the day, I think that if I had advice, besides all the crazy stuff I just said, is remember, you are the attorney. You're going to be the teacher, you're going to be the parent, you're going to be the adult, and you're the problem solver. As best as you can, do it. And, remember that after 5 o'clock or whatever time you clock out, that's it, you're done. You go home and they're going to do their thing. don't take it with you because it'll put gray hair on your head and all sorts of stuff. That's all I got.
Great, thank you. So my last prepared question is, what other trends or issues are you seeing in the practice of family law now and within the last year or a couple years? And Robert, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. The major trend I saw both as an attorney and as a staff attorney is families are no longer mommy and daddy or daddy and mommy. Families are now grandma, great aunt, uncle, the friend of the parents who's around. We have a lot of people in New Mexico doing what's called kinship guardianship. So it's called different things in different parts of the country, but it's just the non-parental unit stepping in as parents. And so we're seeing a lot of people needing to have the court's authority to make sure that they have the ability to get Social Security cards, enroll them in school, go to the doctor, all that stuff. That's crazy. I mean, having somebody whose great grandmother is taking care of the child's 10 years old, great grandma is 90. There's a lot of issues that come with that. We're seeing that more and more, especially now with COVID being a long-term impact on everybody. We're seeing a lot of that. The other thing I think we've seen quite a bit of is military divorces. Like I said, we have a lot of those here in where I live, and they have very special issues on pension, on assets. What is the home state for the service member, that sort of thing. So having to understand that has been something to catch up, both as a practicing attorney, but also the court's attorney trying to advise the judges on what we do and don't do. That's all I got.
What about you, Krista? What have you seen some of the recent trends that are kind of coming up in your practice?
Yeah, so first I say, Robert, I think we would fight if we were ever opposing counsels. Interrogatories in the first month, man, come on. I don't practice I'm really excited for the mediation question, by the way. I'm going to put that plug out there. I really like family law because it's a lot more collaborative than it can be. But we can talk about that later. The trends I'm seeing the most: people are not getting married anymore. There are people, you'll have kids. They're having kids with each other because that's less of a commitment somehow. And they're not getting married. And it drives me crazy. There are so many reasons why it's so much better to get married before you start procreating, the protections that you have. I have so many young couples that come to my office, and I get this story, one parent has quit their job to be a stay-at-home parent. The other parent has been supporting them for the last 5 years. For whatever reason, they didn't want to get married. And it ranges from not believing in marriage to coming from a broken home, not wanting to get married. And then now they're like, well, can I get some sort of spousal support or some sort of transition support? And legally, you're not entitled to anything. And they have limited funds now. And the other parent has all of this money to start arguing for custody to hurt them for whatever reason. And it's a struggle. So tell your friends, get married before you have kids, or put a ring on it right after, because the legal implications of having children outside of marriage is devastating to some parties. And it's hard when you're in that position. It breaks my heart when there is no legal solution to what they're dealing with. But I'm seeing it more and more. In my practice, I'm also seeing my divorced couples are much older, which is very surprising. I'm like, you already have 30 years in, it's cheaper to keep them. Like, what's happening? I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? You're going to lose your beautiful house. Like, I've seen it. It's gorgeous. Like, what is happening? But that's what I'm seeing, is a lot of older couples are starting these new chapters in their lives. And I don't know what inspiration that's from, but power to you. I hope you get out there and start dating again and live that life. But that's what I'm seeing. So tell your young friends to get married, and advise the older people looking to split up. Like, are they sure they want to lose all of their financial assets or have to share them? Because it's rough. It's rough conversations we're having.
Thank you, Krista. What about you, Savannah? What are you seeing?
Yeah, the the gray wave is definitely coming as far as the divorce arena is concerned, which is interesting because they don't have minor children usually at that point that we're arguing over, but they do have substantially more assets, and so it is sort of interesting. And those divorces do tend to come with a lot more emotional issues that come along with a certain attachment to items and that sort of thing, and so there's a whole host of issues that come. I would say down where I'm at, the father's rights has really become a big issue in that they had very few before. It's finally becoming recognized. So for example, down here in Georgia, men don't just have rights to children. So if me and my partner are unmarried and we have a child together, I have all rights to that child until they perform a legitimation proceeding. So a child is still born as an illegitimate child here in Georgia if you are not married. Now, if you eventually get married, you automatically legitimate the child. But in order to obtain rights as a man, you either have to pay for the wedding or pay for the legitimation, because otherwise you have no rights. Beyond that, we've been trying to expand, and so it actually came up to the legislature this year to have a discussion about equal parenting time and whether that is the default to have joint 50-50 parenting time versus some other schedule. Now, we are still in the some other schedule. We didn't pass that, but there's a lot of states that do have a presumption or a default to more of the 50-50 arena. And so the fact that it was a topic of conversation was really big here. Now, it's problematic for a lot of reasons in that you can take 2.5 hours to go 15 miles in traffic around here, and so sometimes those are issues that can really be prohibitory to having joint custody. But generally, the fact that fathers are kind of working up in their rights is a big issue around here. And it's helpful in that mothers who sometimes realize they've got an equal parent and they've got a parent who can exercise 50-50 custody, it's helpful for them to get rid of that stigma, because there's still very much a feeling around, and every now and then you'll run into a case where you still get the argument, but I'm mom, and they can't understand why they don't have primary custody because their mom had primary custody of them, and their grandmother had primary custody of them, and their aunts have primary custody of all their children. And it's sort of emotional in that they feel like they're being attacked or told that they're a bad mom for sharing equal parenting time, when really it's just that studies have caught up and say it's a lot better for children to have that healthy relationship with both parents. And so the fact that fathers' rights is coming up is not just big for dads, but it also has been a big movement for moms and moms who are willing to share parenting time and let their children have that experience.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I want to get into some of the participant questions. I'm going to start with the mediation one since Krista brought it up. How popular is mediation in matrimonial actions, and what kind of qualifications do you need to become a matrimonial mediator?
Okay, so in the state of New Mexico, you don't need to have qualifications, but I would say the best mediators have some sort of legal training. If they're not lawyers doing it as a part of their practice, I love retired judges. I think clients really respect their opinion and their input and listen to their advice a lot better. As a young attorney, sometimes your clients don't fully trust you, or you're telling them something they don't want to hear. And that's hard to hear from someone who is younger and someone who's like a minority female, like just a young woman in the practice of law. It comes with its challenges. If you know, you know. So it's nice to go to mediation. I love mediation. I cannot tell you how amazing it is. And when you really tell your clients, like, look, you know your child, you know yourself, and you know your spouse or your other parent, you know what is best for your family. And the solutions that you can come up with together are going to be 10 times better than the judge who knows nothing about you. You are one of his thousands cases that he has to move. And when you guys start fighting about curtains, he's not going to care about you at all. He knows nothing about dietary restrictions and the special school you want that's 40 miles away that everyone's going to have to drive to. It's not happening. So I love mediation, that you can get really creative and functional parenting plans. You have to be careful because you get I always tell people, you're going to plan your documents like you hate each other. That's what we're going to write them for. You can't communicate. You can't talk. This is going to tell you exactly what to do. And my parenting plans are usually like 15 pages on the light side. And I get teased a lot for it, but my couples don't litigate after. I've been doing this for some time now. We see that they go without hiring new attorneys for a long time. And that's how we plan your documents. And we're not going to switch kid at noon on Christmas Day because they have breakfast and then they do Christmas dinner at the, like, no, that's done. The life of that is over. But as far as being able to say, we really like this teacher at this school and we're both willing to drive to it, maybe dad gets an extra few hours, or maybe parent A gets to get them a little bit early. Like, those accommodations can be made in mediation. When the judge comes out and he says, this is it, you're stuck. So I'm a huge proponent of mediation, but I also believe it's only as good as your mediator. So while in New Mexico, again, there's no real qualifications you have to have, shadowing mediators in your locality would be a great idea. Talk to family law attorneys and ask them who good mediators are, because they'll tell you. I love recommending them. If you find a good one, well, you try to hide them at first so that they'll have availability for you. And then you want to help pimp them out and get the business and know that they're good, and hope that you get them again on another case. So lawyers will be honest about like who good people like that are, and then shadow those people and learn. Mediators have like a really special way of communicating and making everyone feel heard. I have a military background, and so sometimes my patience is not the greatest. And some of these mediators are just fantastic. The language they use, the persuasiveness with the clients, and coming out with some really creative solutions. Sometimes mediators come up with the last little piece of the puzzle that fixes everything. Because they can't tell you how many times we get to the end of mediation and it's coming down to signing the papers and somebody wants to blow it up. They're like, no, the panic, because everybody wants a divorce and they hate the other party and they're raging the war drum until it's time to sign the papers. It's really emotional. It's still the ending of something that meant a lot to them. And a lot of mediators know that and have experience with that and can really get you through the final hump. So I swear by it. I don't like doing discovery and depositions and all that stuff if you don't have to. So you definitely shouldn't let cases linger, because you want to get resolution and resolve. But I really like trying to work with the other party, because I think the less destruction you cause, the more likely they are to live happy and kind of rebuild some sort of functional family unit.
Right. Savannah, do you have any thoughts on that and using mediators in Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. I mean, in Georgia, mediation is required in most counties before you can get to a final hearing. You have to have certain qualifications in a certain number of hours, and you have to register as a neutral, and then you have to take additional domestic violence training, because that's always a concern in family law mediation of, if they don't get this deal, or if so-and-so takes this position, is it going to be really bad for them when they get home? And so you have to have some background there so that you're not kind of forcing anyone into a bandsaw, or they're not really in a position to negotiate. But otherwise, I'll echo a lot of the things Krista said.
Great. Robert, do you have anything to add on mediation and the use of for family law?
I think Krista's 100% on it. And I told my clients, and I tell everybody who comes to the courthouse the same thing. Why are you going to let some stranger figure out what's best for your family? Figure it out. And so use a mediator if you can. We have a mediation program in my courthouse. We refer everybody to that to see if they can figure it out. When I was in law school and after law school, I took the mediator training for both basic and family law mediation, which is something I think everyone who's interested in it should do. I think it's the only reason you should be in court is if you have a high conflict divorce and people just don't want to give in. Everybody else doesn't want to be paying me and Krista and Savannah their paycheck. They want to get done with their divorce and go on with their lives. So utilize a mediator. They will find a solution for most of your problems. They will help you figure it out in a less conflict way. And what I always try to tell people is, you are the example to your kids. If you can talk it out and mediate it instead of screaming and yelling and calling cops and courthouses, then that's what's going to work for you. A lot of attorneys like mediators, but there's some of the old guard, as I call them, who just want to litigate everything. I think at the end of the day, you need to embrace this alternative dispute resolution method for the benefit of your sanity and for your client's well-being.
Great, thank you. I want to there's two questions about mental health. I'm going to kind of combine them. So somebody was wondering, what mental health techniques do you use for separating the tragic experiences you come across in your personal life from your personal life? And then, how has practicing family law affected your mental health? And, again, what do you use and what kind of techniques do you do to kind of separate the work and what you see versus when you go home and deal with your family and loved ones?
So I don't mind I had a wild mental health roller coaster that I don't mind sharing. So it actually had nothing to do with my practice and had to do with a certain type of medication that I was taking. But I got thrust into a year-long, very deep depression while in this type of practice where my whole life was the depressing and the what's going wrong and the it's everybody's fault and on all of this. So it was a really difficult time and I practiced every single method I could find. So interestingly, in the state of Georgia, you get 6 free sessions with a therapist as covered by your bar membership. So they recognize that this is an issue, not just in family practice, but in all areas of practice. You definitely should check with your bar association and see if there's similar programs because it is worth it. I mean, even if you have nothing going on, to think every other month I can sit down with a licensed person and just unload all of these emotions that I'm having is great because it's really difficult to come home and you've been talking about this and that and all the terrible, and then you have to come home to your family. Also, side note, I have a 9-year-old. So there's times that these things happen and it's my kid's friend or someone on my son's baseball team. And so you get cornered at these events and you kind of have to, trudge that battle, but you really can't talk about it. I mean, you can't really come home in front of your own children and say like, you wouldn't believe what this parent did. Plus, it makes you hyper vigilant as a parent because every time you see this kid got into that or this kid started doing this, you start psychoanalyzing the things happening in your own life. So it really is a difficult road to tread. And it really can be difficult because, again, you're running into these people at summer camp. I've actually had to get a personal restraining order against an opposing party for threats that were made. And so I very much had to live in this, like, we have to be really careful at camp drop off and some of those other pieces just because of everything that comes along with it. So when dealing with that, the answer is there is not one size that fits all. So you have to just get in your own space as to how you can internalize and separate those things. And you've got practice. You've got all the toolkits to do that. Think about it. You put your entire heart and soul into the rule against perpetuities. And I would bet that you've been able to separate that from your mind and you are now thriving without thinking about the rule against perpetuities on a regular basis. And so you have to just practice those skills when you're dealing with these issues where you're seeing videos of attacks and photos of bruising and recordings of children screaming, or just even things that aren't that extreme that just weigh on you. Most divorces, all of a sudden the other side has a personality disorder. So whether they're schizophrenic or bipolar or a narcissist, they all have something that's completely undiagnosed by everyone other than their spouse. And so there is a lot of narcissistic tendencies that you run into, a lot of need for control. And it's hard when you are taking the brunt of that for your client to not internalize it. So you practice exercising, you practice prioritizing that time with your family, taking time for vacation, turning your cell phone off. You have to practice the breathing exercises in the middle of the day. You have to tell yourself, I'm putting this case down. The discovery will still be here tomorrow. Mediation is not until a month from now. I need to work on happier times or work on another project. So it's really a matter of figuring out what works for you and having a good support group. So whether that's through the bar, we have a fantastic family bar here in North Georgia, whether that's through the benefits you get through the bar with psychiatry, whether that's through colleagues, whether that's through your family, whether that's through having a good friend group. I've reached out on the Phi Alpha Delta website a few times when I was going through my medically induced problem, and got a lot of support from brothers that were just willing to say, this is what I do when I'm stressed out. Here's my advice. Make sure you eat lunch. That was a huge change in my day of making sure that I ate every day, because I didn't eat lunch till 3 o'clock today, because your practice just is, you're available when they have time off from work, right? And so things like making sure you at least eat something and get through your day are huge game changers. But really, it's a matter of finding what works for you and finding who's going to be there to support you in the times that you just can't, because it happens to all of us.
Great, thank you. Krista, do you have anything you want to add? Or how do you kind of deal with that, the mental illness or the, stress and possibilities of mental illness and that sort of thing?
I think it's so great that more people are talking about it too. I think it's great that Savannah was like willing to share her story, because so many people, I think, especially in the law, they like to hide or put the facade on. Asking lawyers in your area, like, what should I expect to make, or what should I charge, or how do you deal with this, or how does your family handle that? Everyone's perfect. Everyone's perfect and a millionaire. So you're like finding communities maybe that aren't in your state are easier to talk to about that stuff. I don't mind sharing anything about that, so feel free. But I think Savannah was really touching on boundaries. And with COVID, with the isolation, it was not a great time to live at home alone. Like, I love it all the other times, but when we're on stay-at-home orders, and I filled that with work. And I think it's really easy to take on more than you can chew when you're working 10 or 12 hours a day just because you have nothing else to do. So that's really important. So setting boundaries and like making sure you're eating, that was my big one. I was like, when's the last time I ate? And it might have been the day before and I didn't know. And as a new associate, when you're killing yourself to make your billable hours or to put good impressions or create good work product, it's really easy to neglect your basic needs because you're stressed out and you're not worried about it. And I think a good way to hold yourself accountable to those boundaries is making your expectations very clear with your clients. What do you expect them to do for you, and what is expected of you for them? I just posted about something on social media today. My firm does not trade legal fantasies for money. We are not doing crazy arguments for you because you pay us. That's not what I'm in the business of. And I'm not going to be called at midnight. If it is a true emergency, then you need to call the police. I am available for real, authentic issues that I can help you with. And a lot of people haven't had contact with lawyers before this. And so you really need to spell it out with them. And if you do that, it creates a much healthier place to practice. And when I think on a personal level, you have to celebrate the wins. I think we're all kind of type A, right? We made it through law school. I am the first person, when I win a case, I will go through 10 or 12 things I could have done better. Like, what did this, and I'm like, I just won it. Like, this person is being released from jail, or this person got full custody of their kids. Like, I need to take that time to celebrate with them so they feel good about it. When you've done something great, they should walk away feeling good, not confused. And you should walk away feeling good because that was your work that got you there. And take that moment and not automatically do a list of what could I have done better. I think it's a good thing to go through that list, but celebrate.
Great. Robert, do you have something to add too about kind of how you set the boundaries and that sort of and that sort of thing?
Sure. I think the first thing that I had to learn the hard way was I need to get off my ass and go exercise. You're going to spend however many hours in your chair or at your desk, and that's just not physically good for you. Plus, you get all the stress of the cases. You need to take that exercise break to keep your body healthy, because the client don't care. The opposing party don't care if you drop dead of a heart attack or you end up in an anxiety base. You're the only one who can care. So you have to make that time to don't eat crap, take care of your body, take your medications, whatever it is you got to do to stay healthy. Now, the mental health aspect of it is real simple. Again, like I said, can't fix crazy. So you're not in charge of fixing the entire world. And, also there's only so many hours of the day. I think Krista's point is 100% right. I can't do anything for you at 2:00 in the morning on Tuesday. There's nothing I can do for you. The cops are, if it's that crazy, call the cops. And we get those calls here at the courthouse too, at all sorts of hours, come, he dropped the kid off late and it's 10:01, and it's supposed to be at 10. All right, well, I can't do nothing for you, file your motion. I think setting boundaries, taking care of your body, and then also saying the word no. No, Michelle, I can't do another presentation for P.A.D. No, Savannah, I can't be on the board of directors for whatever. No, Krista, I don't have time to review your pleading because I got to do whatever I got to do. You have to set those boundaries in your professional and personal life so that you make yourself the priority. A lot of you are on the call are going to be probably just getting out of law school and ready to do those 80-hour work weeks and stuff, which is awesome. Good for you. That's not sustainable long term. And you're going to have a physical issue, a mental issue, or both trying to do that. So regulate yourself and take care of your time. That's the most important thing. Do a good job for your client, but do a good job first for you. Got to put your life jacket on first before anybody else.
Great, thank you. I will tell you all, you will see Robert in a couple of months on another panel. So stay tuned. So I want to finish up with this question. It's any advice that any of you have for how to get into the profession? After you're coming out of clerkships, they said, the question was, they see a lot of positions in the 3 to 5 years experience. How do you break into it if you're just getting out of law school or just coming off a clerkship? How do you get into family law that way? I don't know, Krista, do you want to start with how you kind of broke in? And
so I definitely was an imposter. I broke in because of need. My clients needed this service. And like I said, there was a huge disparity between the free services and what good quality law firms are charging. There was a need for the middle. And that's kind of where I live. I would say definitely look for mentors. As a young attorney, you have the excuse of being young and new. You're not going to ruin your reputation for asking for help. Attorneys love to take you, but first they're going to pay for your lunch. So ask them, they're going to pay for it. And they're going to want to talk about themselves, and you can get a lot of information and create bonds. So you can, when you get something weird you haven't seen before, you have someone to call. That's your network is the most precious thing you can build, the most priceless thing and valuable thing. Because if you get a weird case and you don't know what to do and you have no friends in the profession, what do you do? That's when you see malpractice and those ethical opinions that are named after you. Don't want that named after you. And then I saw that it's like you have to have experience. Go to a small firm. And the real reason is you're cheaper. We like you. You're cheaper. You don't have any bad habits that we have to train out of you. And we can teach you to do things how we like. So find those smaller firms, those solo practitioners that are looking for clerks when you're a student, and then come in. We can afford you. And if liking who you work with is more important than your skill, if I like you and trust you, and I'm going to trust you with my reputation, my business, my livelihood, that's more important than whether or no you know how to file this motion, because I can teach you that. I can't teach you how to be trustworthy and how to be a good person. So I would really try the smaller firms or do the flip. The really big ones are going to have built-in training programs for you, and they can afford to take all the extra time to train you. I think you're going to have a hard time in that middle range. So reach out and don't be afraid to bug people. I am the worst. Like, my inbox gets overfilled and people get lost in there. The squeaky wheel gets my attention. So bug those attorneys. They want to be mentors. They want to buy you things and talk about themselves. I promise.
what about you, Savannah?
I'm recalling a mentor who once told me it's never an imposition if I get to pontificate. And so that's always stuck with me as far as networking is concerned. But it definitely, when you're interviewing for family law, we joke about finding the unicorn. We want someone that has thick skin. I mean, the issues that we just talked through, you have to show. I mean, a lot of people will get into family law because they go, oh, my, friend's older brother got divorced and I watched it happen. And you're like, okay, tell me more about your skills, right? And so Saying I like drama is not the same as I can handle drama. And so usually, when we talk to new folks, it's a lot about what can you handle? Can you handle the fact that you're going to get 17 phone calls at 6:30 in the morning on the 4th of July because somebody didn't do an exchange on time? I mean, you have to set those boundaries, but they're still going to get through. And if that's going to get to a point where you're going to crack, it's going to be really difficult. So a lot of the times showing I'm here, I'm tough, look at everything that I've juggled. I've done Phi Alpha Delta on top of doing school, on top of doing my clerkship, on top of doing DoorDash on the side or whatever it is, and kind of showing how much you can stack at one time is particularly helpful, and things that I know we look for in my firm, like certain organizations that, have you do a lot of hands-on work. It's really important because I came in as a first-year associate that they thought I was a third-year associate because I could just run with it. I mean, they have to stop and show you, here's how you would defend a deposition, and here's how you do all these things they don't teach you how to do in law school. But if we put you under the pressure and give you the tools, can you run with it? And so it's, that's where this organization can bring a lot of value to your resume, and being able to explain with specificity, this is what I did that helped me be able to be ready for a hands-on practice. This is not doing default judgments all day where you just have to bill an insane amount of hours sitting in your office. This is hands-on, talking to clients, working with opposing counsels, doing all the things that, litigation light. So you're doing all the thick of it on a lower budget. And so you really have to show your ability to manage skills. And I think we expect that if you've made it to the third year. So if you want to break in before that, you just have to be able to show that balancing act.
Great. What advice do you have, Robert, for people trying to break into the field?
I think the first thing is you got to find a mentor for sure. We've all talked about it. My mentor is a sitting judge that I work for now, and she took me out to lunch, and in that hour and a half of lunch, I learned more about being a practitioner and about the theory and practicality than I did in all my law school classes. So you got to find a mentor, someone who's going to be willing to help you out. I think volunteering to be a guardian ad litem, to be a mediator, to go to a pro se center or a public law day or something is also helpful too, because you will learn by doing, and you'll see what other attorneys do and how they interview, how the case is supposed to progress, and people will teach you. I think you should also not be afraid to learn from the other parts of the family law tree. So judges and attorneys are fine, but we also have hearing officers, therapists, domestic violence, so hearing officers. Understanding how those things play into what you do as an attorney is helpful. As far as getting a job, the advice that we gave at University of Mexico was that everybody wants to work in the major cities, Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Nobody wants to work in the hinterlands. Go to the hinterlands. You're going to find a lot of work for you in places where there's not a lot of attorneys. Where the per capita, the population is big, but the attorney pool is really small. A firm's going to pick you up and hire you. Now, if you really want to work for Cordell and make a ton of money, that's great. Have fun with that. Get really good grades in school, get the right clerkship out of school, and then go do that. If you want to learn country lawyering, then go find a small firm to do that. Again, it's all about networking and the skills you bring to it. And so, like Savannah and Krista were saying, if you can juggle multiple things, if you don't let emotions get in your way to get your job done, and you know how to balance it, you're doing really much better than most 5th or 6th year attorneys who are they were civil litigators and then they try to do family law, and you can tell the difference right away who can and can't do it. So I think just making those connections, preparing yourself, and learning how the whole tree works was really helpful for me.
Great. I have one last question so we can go out on a positive note. What's like the one thing that you really find rewarding about being a family law attorney or practicing in family law? Krista, do you want to start?
I think you have a real ability to make an impact on someone's life. It's great to do like these big policy changes or change the law somehow and be famous and whatnot. But I think family law attorneys are some of the few people that can really set a kid up for success. in a nasty custody, get them a working family plan, or just be the person that listens to your client. And no one's listened to her before this or him before this. And you are going to make some of the most impact that you'll ever make in your life. These people are coming to you because they're in some of the most tragic places that they've ever been or will ever be. And it's an amazing opportunity. I would say it's an honor that they're trusting me with this. They're trusting you with the most precious things, their money and their children. There's nothing more important to people in the world. And so it's amazing to me to be a part of that process of doing something good. But on the flip side, it's an amazing responsibility too. You have to remember that. So when you get stuck in the cash flow or the clients and the stress, you have to remember, I'm not just filing a motion. I'm trying to get this child the proper medical care that they're not getting right now. So it's an amazing way that my stress and my long hours and my money, it's all worth it, because every piece of paper I file, there's a person behind it in a really meaningful way.
Great. What about you, Robert?
Krista's right. It's the only part of being a lawyer that you'll see an immediate effect on further good when you can resolve that case. I think for me, what I enjoy about being a family law attorney and now being a family, I do almost all the family law cases in my courtroom, in my courthouse, is it gives you an opportunity to give somebody a childhood that they wouldn't have had. It gives you an opportunity to help that woman or that man get out of that abusive relationship or that just relationship that doesn't work for them. And, compare that to, all right, I got you your contract revoked and you got your deposit back, or, your merger's gone through, whatever. I mean, all that stuff is important too, but that's just paper. These are people. I think for those of you who are on the call that are who live like me and function off of people, family law is where you want to go. I think that's the best thing about being a family law attorney.
What about you, Savannah? What do you find most rewarding about practicing family law?
The best part about practicing family law is when you tell other attorneys that you practice family law and they go, oh, really? I did that once in law school and I hated it. No, it's it's very similar. You definitely get to feel like you are helping someone. You meet someone who's in a bad situation for a lot of reasons. I mean, whether that's because it was just a marriage that wasn't working, whether that's because they found their true love outside of the marriage and it's truly a love story that you're telling in the background. You really are getting to help day to day. I mean, there's a saying that when you do criminal law, you're representing people at their best day. And when you're doing family law, you're representing good people on perhaps their worst day. And so you really get a chance to help someone going through something, whether it's absolutely devastating or whether it's just something they'd rather not go through. You are getting someone through what could potentially be the worst part of their life, where they're really for the first time interacting with the legal system, and you get to help them walk through it with dignity and grace and walk out on the other side ready to start their new life. I mean, you really are giving someone who has perhaps been in a marriage where they've been controlled or where they've had to manage or take care of another partner just because they didn't feel like taking care of themselves for 20 years, and they get to be free. I had a judge who told a woman, it was a Friday, and he said, ma'am, I hope you're very, very careful this weekend. And she's like, why? I'm kind of nervous that the judge is going to set aside the divorce. And he says, because you're a free woman and you get to be a free woman this weekend. And so it was this big party, and it really was. I mean, that's it. You do family law because you are helping someone get through the darkest cloud of their life with hopefully the brightest sunshine on the other side. And I like to bring that sunshine to these folks who are going through this really difficult time.
I like the activity. I almost want the face to put on for the next one. That was awesome. But I want to
family law.
Yeah, the family law face. I want to thank Robert and Savannah and Krista for agreeing to share their thoughts and their expertise in family law with everyone. Thank you all for coming and joining us for the Phi Alpha Delta Professional Speakers Series. We will continue to do these monthly. So if you have ideas for topics, please let us know. If you want to be a speaker at one of our upcoming events, please let me know. We're always looking for speakers. But again, thank you all for coming. Thank you to Robert, Savannah, and Krista. We couldn't do these without our members. And again, thank you all very much and have a good day. You're free.